Welcome to the Book Fair Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this show is all about children's literature and the freedom to read. This week we have an interview with Tui T. Sutherland, author of the Wings of Fire series. Next Wednesday we will have another episode highlighting diverse and notable new releases, as well as another interview on Friday. Make sure you follow wherever you are currently listening to stay informed about the latest in children's literature. Now, on with the show. Good morning, Tui T. Sutherland. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Anthony. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to have you here, and thank you for being generous with your time. Can we start off just by having you introduce yourself and the work that we'll be discussing today?
Sure. I'm Tui Sutherland. I am the author of a series called Wings of Fire, which is a series all about dragons. The idea here is that it's like an epic fantasy adventure, but the heroes of the books are the dragons instead of the humans. And each book follows a different dragon in this world, dealing with issues of like war and prophecy and fate and destiny. And the specific one that just came out is book 16 in the series. It's called The Hybrid Prince, and it follows a young dragon named Umber as he goes to a part of the world that we haven't seen before. So I'm really excited because in the first 15 books, I introduced 2 different continents where the dragons live. And now we're going to a totally new place where there are dragons that like a type that we haven't seen. And there's like lots of secrets and connections to the history of this world that we haven't gotten into before. So I'm hoping that kids will really enjoy it.
And of course, this is book number 16 in a series with a couple of spin-offs as well. And you did mention that in the first 15 books, there are 2 continents. Was this secluded island something that you had always intended on bringing up? Or was this something that you kind of brought about in the writing process when you were coming up with ideas for the story as you went along?
Oh, great question. So usually I feel like as I'm writing, the world like expands as I'm writing. Like I knew I had certain things in my head for the history of the world. And it was around book 10 that I realized I needed this, or book 9 actually, that I realized I needed this other continent in the first place, the second continent, because the first 10 books are set just in one place. And then book 11 takes you across the ocean to the second continent. And I sort of felt like there should be, kids are always asking, is there a third continent? And what I was picturing was more an area of the world where maybe like the dragons have to go to hide, where there's like, because I have a lot of dragons in the series and sort of across the history of the series that have like managed to escape from whatever situation they're in, and we don't know where they went. So I was thinking to myself, like, wouldn't it be cool if there was this, maybe not a whole, like not as big as the other 2 continents, but an island. And I was thinking, about the size of Australia. So my mom is from New Zealand, so I love that part of the world, like Australia and New Zealand. And I thought it would be kind of a fun homage to my Australian and New Zealand readers if I created this island, had a lot of the dragons on it, sort of named after like the flora and fauna of Australia and New Zealand, and have it be a place where that answers some of the questions of like, where did those dragons go? Like, and in particular, in The Hybrid Prince, the one we're focused on is Umber. And he actually was in book 6. And at the end of book 6, he had to run away with his sister. And we saw them, like from the book 6 character's point of view, we saw them basically like jump out a window at their school and fly off into the distance. And we haven't seen them since. And so I knew I had to write this book because, I feel like myself and every kid who read it were like, well, where did he go? Is he okay? Why haven't we seen him in 10 books? So hopefully this will answer a lot of those questions.
And you mentioned that Umber's last appearance was in book 6. Does that mean that there are other options for bringing back characters that we haven't seen for a long time?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I love to write in a way where I feel like there's a lot of windows into other stories in the world. So as you're reading along, you're very much in one character's head in each book, but you can see kind of like hints of stories happening all around. That's one of the feelings that I hope like kid readers get from this book is like, there's not just one single story. There's not just one single hero. Everyone, each little dragon like gets to be the hero at some point. And hopefully what they're feeling is like, I could do that too. Like there's not like one chosen one. Anyone can help save the world, and maybe it could be me. And maybe like if we're all looking at, say, like Umber or Moon or Kibble or Luna. But if you peek over here, like the dragon that I made up could also be saving the world in their own special way, because every dragon is a little bit different and they each have different sort of skill sets or connections that can help them make a difference. And so that's something I hope kids feel, that they can make a difference themselves, and also that they can write stories set in this world where like those dragons are having adventures, and that a lot of their favorite characters, like they should write stories about them, and maybe they'll come back later in the series. Yeah, I definitely want it to feel like a world where there's just a lot going on and anyone can jump in and be part of it.
And you said that you hope that people can write their own stories. Is that something that you've seen? Have you been on the lookout, or have you heard of young people writing their own stories with their own characters in this universe?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my favorite thing. I love it so much. Like I want everyone to feel like they can be part of it. Like and that, their voice is just as important and just as interesting. I personally try not to read the fan fiction because I don't want to accidentally steal somebody's idea or see something that I love and then I can't do it. But I love that people are out there writing it. Like I want every kid to feel like they can create their own dragon or like take this world and play in it. I think it's a really great way to get started as a writer, is to like to play in a setting where you already know. You don't have to create it all from scratch. You can just jump into Wings of Fire world, and the history, and then you can like make your own dragons. I get a lot of art at the events that I do where kids show up and are like, this is my original character. Let me tell you all about her. And a lot of them are hybrids, which I think is really interesting because in the world that I introduced, there are 10 different tribes. But a lot of kids were very excited to be like, well, what if you took a silk wing and a night wing and put them together? What would that be? Which powers would they have? And what would they look like? Or what if you took an ice wing and a sky wing and put them together? What would that look like? And I loved how excited they got about just imagining all of that. And so this book has a lot of hybrids in it. It's an island where dragons have been coming for centuries from all the different tribes and living together. So it hopefully answers some of those questions and inspires even more fan art, which I'm very excited about.
Is this the first time that we've seen hybrids in the Wings of Fire series?
No, they've been here all along. The first hybrid who had it's a little bit of a spoiler, but for book 5, so I think it's okay to say that we find out in book 5 that one of our main characters from the first 5 books is actually a hybrid, and she didn't know it. But her mom is a sandwing and her dad was a nightwing, and that's Sunny. And then there have been others, like as we've gone along. The way I have it in my head is that the tribes have been pretty separated for most of the last 1,000 years or so. And so there haven't been a lot, but over the last 20 years, there's been this big war going on the main continent, on Pyria. And so it's meant that a lot more dragons have met each other, like fighting like in alliances or like in the camps or like running away to be in the peace movement. And so there are more hybrids now than there have been in previous like generations.
And let's talk a little bit about that ongoing conflict, the idea of war and the dragons that need to escape it. And this is something that, especially now, can't be overlooked, that art is inherently political, even when you're not trying to make it. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like writing, especially these younger characters in their own, their own way, they're younger, these young characters in a situation where they are witnessing or even participating in something as massive and world-changing as war?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing, certainly throughout the series. The first 5 books are about these little dragons trying to stop a war, that they've been raised by this peace movement underground and told their whole life, you're in a prophecy that says that you're the ones who are going to stop the war. Like the whole world is counting on you. And so the first 5 books are about kind of that pressure, the level of expectation, and the way that they are wrestling with, like, is this our destiny? Like, is it like, do we have any choice in our lives? Like, what can we do as like little dragons? One of them is very convinced that like anything they do will be right because it's already fated. And she has some struggles with that in her own book. And then in the ones that are like in this one in particular, in book 16, one of the things that I was thinking about was, when the world feels really overwhelming and it seems like there's like the people in power are very cruel and unjust, like what do you do, and how can you, like, as one little dragon, like Umber cares a lot and he really wants to make a difference, but like what can he do? He's just one dragon, and there's like and I obviously I feel this every day. I'm like, how can I make the world better? um and is there only one answer? And I think that what I was sort of getting to in the book is, like, there's a lot of different answers, and there's multiple dragons doing different things in this book in particular to sort of fight the power, the dragons in charge um, who are doing these sort of cruel and unjust things, and sort of that feeling of just like, I think that was definitely something that, as I was going into book 16, it was something that I wanted to sort of explore, because it was something I was just thinking about a lot. It does feel like there's so much in our world that is hard to grapple with. And I'm sure kids also feel it. Like, what can I do? I'm 12. And so I wanted there to be, like, I'm hoping that they'll be like, if they have conversations with their parents about it, like, could you do something like this dragon does, or something like this dragon does? There's a dragon um, who tries to help, like, through her art. Like, she feels like she's in the system, but she's trying to make a difference by making art that changes the way people feel about what's going on, and makes them like feel connected and united, and powerful enough to do something about it. And I think that that's a valid answer. And then there's a dragon who's like, no, we just have to go out and like cause as much chaos as possible, and make sure that the people in charge know that we don't like it, and we're going to fight it, and we're going to make a difference by letting them know every day that, like, this is not okay. And so, I think there are different ways to make a difference, and I'm hoping that, like, it starts conversations between kids and their parents about, like, well, what could I do? I mean, there's dragons who also are like, I just want to make the people close to me, or the dragons close to me, like, feel better every day. Like, that's making a difference, right? Is to, like, bring a little happiness to the ones that are closest to you in the ways that you can. I do think that, like, it's impossible to write anything and not be sort of political. And I don't feel like I have all the answers, but what I try to do in the Wings of Fire books is raise the questions that I'm thinking about, and then like explore several possible answers, and like open the doors for kids to think about those questions and like how they might answer them for themselves. Does that make sense?
It does. And something you said there, where you said, I don't have all the answers, reflects something that I thought was really great in The Hybrid Prince, which is Umbra's very strained relationship with his sister. He feels, even though he is the youngest, that he has to protect her. Can you talk a little bit about the fallout that she had caught, the fallout that came from what she had done in the last book that they were in, and what their relationship is looking like during The Hybrid Prince?
Yeah, it was actually one of the hardest things to write in The Hybrid Prince, because in book 6, when we meet his sister Sora, she is really quiet, very traumatized by the war that they've just come through. So, like, in books 1 through 5, Umber was he's a Mudwing, and the Mudwings all live with their siblings like their whole lives. They just have this really like tight knit group of like brothers and sisters. Um, and they also like that's a unit that goes to war together. So like when the queen says, okay, it's time for us all to go to war, like their little troop is like with their siblings, and off they go to like fight under the queen's orders. And so Sora in particular, like all of them obviously were traumatized by it, but Sora had this sort of very deep sort of PTSD about it. And like over the course of book 6, we discovered like how deep it was. And she was convinced that there was someone at the school who was a soldier on the other side who had killed her sister. And so she like took action to try and do something about it, and it went horribly wrong, and 2 other dragons died. And so she's a very like, damaged dragon, and she feels really guilty about what she did, but she also feels like it's not fair because the other dragon was the bad guy in her head. And so she's dealing with a lot. And Umber wants to protect her, but he also knows she did something wrong. And so he doesn't quite know what the right thing to do is, except he's like, if I just get her far away from other dragons, like maybe she'll get better and be safe to be around people again. And so that's how the book starts, is them running away. And on the way, like they're like, maybe we'll just find an isolated island where we can hide. And they meet this Prince Mulberry. They don't know he's a prince at first, but he comes in and he's like, actually, I have somewhere I can take you, a safe place with other dragons who can help like make things better. And so over the course of the book, Sora does start to get better. And you see her like kind of coming to terms with what she did, and Umber trying to help her through it. One of the main things that does help her through it is this, there's a dragon on this island who's a musician, and the music is actually really helpful to her. That's the artist I was talking about before, like creating art that she hopes like will connect and like inspire people. It really works for Sora. It like speaks to her in a particular way. And so Umber, is struggling with like how to be a good brother, how to protect her, but also, get her to a place where she can kind of comprehend like what she did and how to atone for it. And so, there's a lot that they're both dealing with there. And I had to kind of tweak a lot of their conversations to get them to the right level of like, we love each other. Sometimes we're mad at each other because we're brother and sister. And in this particular situation, it's a very intense situation we've gotten ourselves into, but can we get through it because we love each other so much? Does that make sense?
Can you tell us a little bit about Mulberry, and as well as the Court of Refuge, which is I don't know if it's the actual like name of the island or if it's the just kind of like the where they go for the bulk of the story.
Sure. Yeah. So Mulberry was actually very much the seed of the story in some ways. Like I had in my head like an island that was like safe for dragons to hide, that was full of hybrids, and the Court of Refuge name sort of popped into my head. But what really got me excited finally to write the book was when I started thinking about this character Mulberry. He's sort of loosely based on people I know in my own life who are, there's a couple of people in particular I was thinking of who are like doing things that really change the world in a very concrete, specific way, and are so kind and humble about it. Like they're so beloved by the people around them, because everyone can see like how hard they're trying and like how much they want to make the world better. But they're also they wouldn't think that of themselves. Like they would be surprised, I think, to realize how much everyone loves them. And so that was sort of how I started thinking about Mulberry. And it also because I was looking for a love interest for Umber. Like I wanted to create someone that would be really like perfect for him. Umber is a dragon that I think of as being so full of love. Like he forgives very easily. He makes friends very easily. He just loves everybody. And I wanted it to be someone that was like worthy of all the love that Umber could give him. And so Mulberry has this sort of complicated history because his parents are currently running the Court of Refuge. They're the king and queen there, but they shouldn't be, as it becomes clear, I think, pretty quickly in the book. They kind of stole their throne from the dragons that were running it before. And Mulberry has conflicted feelings about that. He's another dragon who's like, I see problems with the world, but I don't quite know how to fix them. And he's sort of trying to make things better. Like this is the one way that he can. And so it's interesting because he is sort of the obvious hybrid prince in the title. But I think one thing I will say is like you get to the end of the book and there's a hint that because there's a prophecy in this book that mentions a hybrid prince, it's possible he's not the hybrid prince of the prophecy. That's something that we'll get to in later books.
And Tui, can you talk a little bit about, since there are 16 books in this series, can you talk a little bit about just on the maybe on the business side or the publishing side, what was it like pitching the original book? Was there originally a deal for an ongoing series, or was there a set number of books that you had originally planned?
Sure. I've been really lucky, actually, that it has worked out. When I pitched it, I pitched 5 books, and I had a vision in my head of the 5 books of Wings of Fire. Each one would be one of the dragonettes in the prophecy, and we would go from introducing the prophecy and the war to sort of like solving that problem. And then as I was writing books 4 and 5, I started having ideas for other things we could do in this world. And so I went to my editor and said, like, could we do 5 more books that would be a continuation, but like their own story? And they amazingly said yes. And so that's how we've sort of done it, is in these like, it was, the first contract was 1 through 5, the next was 6 through 10, and the next was 11 through 15. And so those are sort of the beginnings of new stories in the world. There's a lot is still brought in from what happened before. But if you wanted to, you could start with book 6 or book 11 or even book 16 and kind of get to start like a new story anew. You might be a little confused when certain other characters show up, but I think that the idea with those is that we're entering the world in a new area and with a new character and a new prophecy. Each of those arcs has a new prophecy that goes with it, that also sort of wraps up like at least that part of it within those 5 books. So I think of it, it's sort of like TV seasons, where like Buffy the Vampire Slayer would like have like in season 1, like, you would defeat the big bad by the season 1 finale, and then there'd be a new one for season 2, and so I feel like that's kind of worked out with the books. I'm lucky because I feel like knowing that I have a place to sort of like book 15 was a good sort of pausing place, because I had like left all the dragons in a good enough place that I felt like, it would be okay if the kids didn't immediately get the next book. Whereas book 16, I can't leave it like this. It ends in a way where I'm like, I'm sorry, the next one is coming really soon, I promise.
So there is the next one, and this is the start of a new arc. Are we at least concrete on if it's 5?
Actually, this one, I'm not totally sure whether I'm going to contain, like, whether the story is going to be 5 books or whether it's going to be like 3 books and then the next 2 are associated. I haven't quite figured that out yet. I'm one of those authors that likes to sort of figure it out as I go. And so actually that's a question I don't totally know the answer to. Like, it would make the most sense if it was like similarly a 5-book arc, but I also, knowing what I want to do, there's like a time jump that I want to do because I have some really young, like lovely characters that are like kind of babies in the books right now. And so it may be that it's all connected, but there's a jump between like book 18 and book 19 where we go forward in time a little bit to see those dragons a little more grown up. I haven't decided.
And as we're reaching our time here today, I have a question that I like to close out all interviews with, and it's open-ended, so just feel free to use this as your final words. Tui, how do you see yourself and the work that you do as a writer?
I hope that the books I'm writing like bring people joy. Like I hope that they're books that make the readers feel like inspired to write their own books and or to go out and like make change in the world, like, or to just even empathize more with other people around them. I feel like the biggest theme of all of the Wings of Fire books is empathy, is the idea that, because we're in a different dragon's head in each book, you get to see them from the outside and then from the inside. And I love the idea of, that's what books are for, right? That's why I feel like there's so many important books in the world, like that can just show you what it's like to be someone that's different from you. I know you do a lot of reporting on the book banning that's going on, which like is so frustrating to me because the fact that people would do this, because I'm like, we need those books. We need books that show you what it's like to be someone different than you. That's the whole point of stories, is to it's like expand your mind and like make you more empathetic to others. And so I hope that like my books encourage kids to read more and write more and think about other people and imagine themselves in different situations, and also like be able to picture themselves as someone who could make a difference in the world, if that makes sense.
Thank you. That was an interview with Tui T. Sutherland. Her latest book, The Hybrid Prince, is available now. You can learn more about Tui and her work at tuibooks.com. If you appreciate the work being done on the show, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at BookFairPod. Lastly, you can follow the show on patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.